Welcome back to the show, everybody. Glad you're here. It's October, and that means Halloween is everywhere. When I was a kid and it wasn't Halloween, to get my dose of ghosts, ghoulies, and goblins, all I had to do was watch Scooby Doo. There's been a recent resurgence, or I should say rediscovery, of those backdrops that made that classic cartoon. I'm talking about those beautiful hand-painted pieces of art, the backgrounds that set the scene. They were really stage pieces for all of the action to play upon. With those and some of those mature storylines, we really set up that eerie atmosphere. But let's be honest, we were there for the big bad villains. Some of them were just bonkers cuckoo. And then others, if you remember, really haunted us. I'm Victor, and straight out of the Gen Experience, Halloween all year long. When the holiday came just once a year, Scooby and the gang provided Halloween scares every week. If you're ready for Scoob's spookiest mysteries that still haunt us, let's go. The creepiest mysteries are ones that combine setting, the crime itself, and of course, the villain. And we start off with one of the best, as the gang makes their way to the home of one of their many friends, the estate of their wealthy friend, Sharon Weatherby. She lives in a grand mansion, and as rich families do, there are skeletons in the closet. Or in this case, a ghost. For kids watching this episode, the ghost of Elias Kingston is fairly off-putting with his cadaverous pallor. Oh, say, this phantom's got some flair. The hex that makes Uncle Stuart age is a bummer, but when we see that the old age hex has taken him all the way to a rotting corpse, the stakes get higher for Saturday morning cartoons and the Scooby Gang. It gets real when Sharon is kidnapped and kept in the secret room behind the bookcase, the same one used in the titular opening. That's right, the ghost of Elias Kingston is so terrifying he was used in the opening of Scooby Doo Where Are You? This is episode 6 from 1969, and it cranks the eerie meter to high. Who exactly is Elias Kingston? Who knows? That's left a bit ambiguous. But the clues he leaves are his undoing when Scooby and pals discover it's Uncle Stuart himself, whose greed for his own family's riches has driven him to gear up as the ghastly ghost and leaves a dead body hanging around for teen sleuths to find. What the hex is going on is when Scooby Doo Where Are You knew how to bring the scares. In this next one, isn't this how the Texas Chainsaw Massacre starts? Teens in a van traveling to a rock festival? It never ends well. Now, the gang didn't pick up a crazed hitchhiker, but they did get lost. Who makes Shaggy the navigator, am I right? Stopping for directions, a farmer makes sure to tell the kids not to take the shortcut. It leads to a haunted mansion, of course. Let's face it, that's where we want them to go, and that's where they end up. Scooby-Doo has some of the creepiest castles and rundown mansions ever seen in a cartoon. Just look at these. The watercolor backgrounds were frighteningly perfect. We may not have noticed the art back then, but we certainly can appreciate them today, and they set a tone. This one's tone said, Headless Spectre. At first, the sheet ghost encounter is pretty cheesy, but it leads them inside the mansion where they find an old painting of Jefferson Stillwell, whose head keeps disappearing and reappearing. This ultimately scares the kids into a room where they find a box.
What's in the box? What's in the fucking box?
Oh God, it's the decapitated head of Jefferson Stillwell, the head of the man in the painting. This is pretty gruesome for 70s cartoons, but it is the scare factor that we all wanted and was occasionally delivered in Scooby-Doo. This episode plays more like Murder, She Wrote, including some great clues that lead to the ultimate crime solving. But first, the Headless Spectre, who was pretty bold for just trying to scare off some kids, is unmasked as simply Penrod Stillwell, who's trying to find the family treasure that is rightfully his, but has been lost. He only wanted to scare trespassers away while he looked. In a rare occurrence, the gang decides to help Penrod find the hidden wealth. At the same time, unmask a real culprit. That sheet ghost from earlier has been making some racket in the attic. It's Aja Shanks, the farmer from the beginning that was also trying to find the treasure first. Now, if only that painting hadn't been moved from its original place in the old house, Jefferson would have been pointing directly at the treasure-filled column. This episode was one of the best mystery whodunits that included a standout spectral villain. Do you remember him or Elias Kingston? Which had the greater impact when you were a kid? Even a casual Scooby fan will recognize this old zombie. but he was only half of the team of Zeke and Zeb Perkins, who dressed as the living dead and the witch companion to find the armored truck they had stole and ran off the road into the swamp years ago. But they just can't remember where. The two work the swamp in disguise to ward off nosy kids. Like these, our favorite family of mystery solvers coming back from a fishing trip. This group never takes a break from each other, do they? It's either New Year's in Chinatown or fishing near an old southern swamp. I hope Daphne brought a more appropriate attire. Which Witch's Witch is filled with incredible backgrounds that set the scene for the swamp, the general store, the voodoo witch's hut, but mostly the ramshackled old riverboat on the side of the river to the swamp. This is the base for the creepy zombie, who was just a little off-putting to any kid watching. Although he has a little sloth vibe from the Goonies going for him, you still wanted to avert your eyes. He was a perfect closet monster for any kid going to bed at night, so there is that. Zeke and Zeb try to warn the kids and keep them off their trail, including voodoo dolls of the entire gang, which, after finding one of Zeke in his bed, you'd think he'd been done in. For me as a kid, voodoo and voodoo dolls were the dark and unknown. The witch may not exactly look like Tia Dalma's voodoo representation from Pirates of the Caribbean, but along with the swamp setting, it was an exciting mystery. A lot of obvious clues made it easy for Fred and Velma to quickly put it together and unmask the kooky pair of crooks. This episode includes a typical and groovy night at the malt shop. On the way home, the gang spot a jewel thief, but not just any, the hideous and maniacal ghost of Mr. Hyde. Of course, they don't know this yet. He's just a creep with one of those delirious smiles Scooby Doo villains are famous for. And Hyde is one of the worst. As a kid, seeing him hide in the back of the mystery machine under the blanket, only for Scooby to find him, is one of the most terrifying moments that I truly remember. And one where these kids react appropriately, fleeing from the freakish felon. Eventually tracking him down to a dilapidated old mansion, the show does what it does best. Sets it up with moody scenery and that odd and unsettling strain of music. Immediately falling through a trapdoor, and what show isn't made better with the addition of a secret room, moving bookcase, or trapdoor? Well, they find themselves in the lab of Dr. Jekyll, who fears it's him, turning into Mr. Hyde, perpetuating these terrible acts. I assume he's related to the original Dr. Jekyll, but that's not important right now. This sets up the creepy mystery that includes one of those great mid-show musical numbers that effectively shift tone from Spooksville to a 60s pop sensation perfect for a chase montage. This show also offers some seldom seen misdirection. One of the few times the show offers clues that point in one direction, in this case Helga, the one-time circus star turned maid, only to unveil in the end it's Dr. Jekyll himself who has turned to a life of crime because all of his experiments suck. You should never believe the guy that says they think it's them, should you? Did you hide your face from Hyde when watching this episode over and over again? Kooky really doesn't sound creepy, but when it comes with the insane laughter from the fearsome skeletal face of the space kook, any kid in the 70s watching this classic would stop in their tracks. Taking place in an old airfield where a glowing spaceship is seen landing, the setting is rather new to a show where castles, mansions, and even circus grounds were common. But it's no less desolate and shadowy. Through the abandoned planes and hangars walks the oddly shaped extraterrestrial. Although his light blue spacesuit can seem a bit silly, his strange walk and glowing skull is what adds to the eerie atmosphere. The gang, surprise, runs out of gas and stops a farmer for help. He thinks they're reporters bothering him about the space kook, who's been terrorizing for a couple of weeks. That's one heck of a nickname the media has given our menace, but the villain lives up to it once he surprises our teen sleuths. Although he has no dialogue, it's that high-pitched and cuckoo bananas laugh that the space kook delivers that truly unnerves anybody, including us young viewers. Coming from that crazy kook's otherworldly face, floating in glowing bright orange, Fred, Daphne, Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby are determined to solve a mystery that includes phosphorus paint and an attempted land grab. Unmasking Henry Bascom in a wind tunnel, he proceeds to spill his guts, as the guilty parties often do. Something about a cheap land grab for the property that he heard the US Air Force was thinking of buying up to open a new base. Pretty high-level premise here. Bascom used dummies, sped up soundtracks, a remote-controlled Jeep, and projected a movie of the spaceship in thin air, I guess.
Jeepers!
Those are some serious resources just to nab some land in the 1970s. The spooky space kook might seem a bit far-fetched, but the whole episode remains one of the creepiest to millions of people, if only for the off-putting and maddening cackle each time the alien figure rears his hideous helmet. A Night of Fright is No Delight is one of my absolute favorites. Even if the villains are just a pair of green apparitions, there's something so intrinsically old-school haunted about it all. It begins with Scooby being named an heir to a fortune, because, well, why not? The dead guy is leaving some of his vast wealth to Scooby Doo because he saved him from drowning years earlier. Of course, the stipulation is that members of the family, including Scooby, must stay the night in this spooky old mansion on an island. The gang decides to stay with Scooby, but it becomes apparent someone doesn't want any of the benefactors to get a dime, and slowly, the family begin to disappear. The location is spine-tingling, the setup is simple and a good premise to a mystery. As for our green ghouls, they are some supernatural spooks that just get more frightening as the show goes on. Even after encountering one of these ghosts for the first time, the idea that members of the family are starting to slowly disappear is even more frightening. After the first unexplained absence, an otherworldly message is found in a fogged-up mirror that states their fate. This Scooby entry gets even stranger after our Fab Five figure out how to feed the organ.
Feed the organ and watch the floor. Feed isn't a word, it's musical note.
Whew, our Velma's got some Martha Stewart hands.
D.
A proper mystery trope appears. A trap door opens when the organ is played correctly, that drops the gang smack dab in front of propped up coffins, each filled with a member of the extended family who had been staying the night. Even the illusion of dead bodies in coffins was enough to give us young viewers a shock, and it raised the cool factor too. The spooktacular feeling of the show is the final and empty coffin, dog-shaped.
Jinkies.
This episode just got real, and so do these green goblins that aren't just regular bedsheet ghosts. Suddenly there are two, and their twisted appearance and moves give the viewer an uneasy feeling of fright before our courageous cast attempt to trap the fiends. Another backfire still allows the capture of the lawyer duo of Creeps and Crawls. You heard me. They figured if they scared everyone off the island, the millions would be theirs. They even used dummies for the family members in the coffins who they had already frightened away. As a reward, Scooby is presented the fortune in Confederate money. Meddling kids never do get their reward, do they? It's back to the malt shop for these guys. Sure, it's a werewolf, but it's not the one from the contrived episode A Gaggle of Galloping Ghosts. That's the one with a werewolf joined by a Frankenstein monster and even Dracula. Although very Halloween themed, that one is a bit too on point. This is Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Werewolf. It finds the permanent residents of the Mystery Machine on a camping trip. Their frolic is interrupted by some red eyes watching them in the forest and baying sounds by moonlight. This episode revolves around smuggling, which sounds like a pretty mature premise for a kid's show. While the forest and old mill don't have the same spooky atmosphere as castles and mansions, it's the werewolf himself that gives the show its bite. There is a necessary shot of a cemetery and an open grave of Silas Long. Clearly stating his lichened status on his epitaph, the gang investigate, because that's just what gets them off. Now, the old mill is where both the clues and the creature can be found. The Wolfman makes chase, even locks him up for a time, but at every corner, the hissing and growling beast is a fairly spooky adversary. However, the teens start to uncover some things that don't make sense for a werewolf. But Scooby and Shag are still in a tough spot, and this is where our antagonist gets even more creepy. The two best buds shave the werewolf's head, and believe it or not, little kid Victor hated looking at him this way. The werewolf is even scarier with his buzz cut, and I remember distinctly backing away from the TV as a child whenever he came onto the scene. Setting a trap, this one also went off the rails, but by one of those many danger-prone Daphne moments where she gets caught up in it. Our Wolfman, in a surprising bit of continuity rare for 70s kids fare, continues the show with a scalped scalp, and takes the bait of Shaggy and Scooby in barrels with breathing tubes. However, the tubes are perfectly safe going over the falls, which I assume they practiced in an earlier episode that took place in Niagara and on the border of Canada at a haunted sanitarium. Well, the werewolf isn't so lucky, who's caught going over in his canoe, and a pathetic human scream is heard. The team unmask the unknown rancher, a character that we've never even met before, but he's still a smuggler. Smuggling what, you ask? Sheep. That's right, they stop a sheep rustling scam. There's no mystery too small or too big. Now, this last major Scooby Doo episode has got Halloween written all over it. Seriously, it's in the title, The Headless Horseman of Halloween. A well-known holiday spooky story is brought to life with Scooby Doo in a really well-done way. And who isn't creeped out by a pumpkin-headed rider who searches for a replacement noggin from the living? This episode is one of the few that show the gang in a different outfit. As was the norm, cartoons would keep main characters in the same attire for both recognizability and for cost cutting. We questioned it as kids, but we didn't care. The gang was off to a costume party at the Crane Mansion. Yes, that Crane, descendants of the original Ichabod. Here our final episode includes Doo's cousin Scooby Dum in one of his rare appearances. Having encountered the headless specter at the buffet table, because who can resist those candied apples, the curse of the Headless Horseman seems all too real. The horseman once haunted Ichabod, so now he's back after the Crane family to get ahead. Eventually, it's uncovered that the only head he wants is the one wearing a priceless jewel, Mrs. Crane's, and he might have to knock her block off to get it. Cousin Elwood selfishly takes the jewels to the bank for safekeeping, but never makes it. Only his empty car is found on the road. The great big mansion, the fog, and of course the appearance of the Headless Horseman, now with Elwood's head, only justify the family's fears and give the young viewers the creep factor we were looking for and the nightmares we weren't expecting. Although the clues were wacky,
Flying saucer lands at Beautician's convention.
maybe the space kook is up to his old tricks, the power goes out at the mansion and it has all the makings of one hauntingly perfect Halloween episode. After visiting the spot where the horseman is supposedly buried, he appears and gives chase, only to be discovered by Scooby and Shaggy, who suddenly jump aboard his plane as he takes off to escape. I'm not kidding, causing an inevitable crash that everyone walks away with without a scratch. But the horseman is unmasked as Cousin Elwood Crane. Shocker, right? Like you didn't see that coming.
Cheaper.
Having actual Halloween fun during a Halloween party with a very iconic Halloween character makes this one of the top spooky episodes of the series that really brought the scares to us kids. Do you remember this one? Which one of these guys gave you the most chills? There have been so many kooky and creepy villains during the initial series. Who can forget the Creeper, the skeleton monsters, Ebenezer Crab, Ankh the Mummy, and the crazed Dr. Coffin, or even the Disc Demon? But there have been some real doozies too, like a ghost pterodactyl. A pterodactyl! I didn't know they could even have ghosts. What we tended to overlook when we were young was just how incredible those backgrounds were. The remarkable settings of Scooby Doo, those fantastic paintings, those backgrounds, and the spooky sounds that always set the tone and developed what we recognize still today as classic mystery thriller environments. We learned them during the Jet experience and they've stuck with us. The artwork is really top notch, especially when juxtaposed with bright and silly characters. Villains like the Demon and the Jaguaro often gave us over the top madness, and on occasion, the storylines were far from engaging. But what did we care during 22 minutes of slapstick fun? Never wanting to dip their toe into terrorizer territory, many episodes softened the blow with those catchy Monkees-esque song selections whose lyrics had absolutely nothing to do with the story at hand. Like everything else from the Gen experience, we wouldn't have it any other way. Did you click like and subscribe? Don't be afraid. I'm dying to have you join me next time. I hope you enjoyed this show and it brought back some memories, as well as gave you a different perspective on the spooky Scooby mysteries that haunted us. Let us know in the comments your favorites and come back soon. Until next time.